There is a sixth dimension beyond that which is known to man. A multiverse as vast as eternity, as timeless as the Infinity Gems. It is the middle ground between the big two and the indie publishers, between sci-fi and mysticism, and it lies between the pages of the reader's imagination, at the summit of entertainment, the dimension of comics, where a humble service is held. We call this service the Gospel of Comics.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Gospel of Comics. I am your host, The Church of Failure, and unlike always, my trusty co-host, Ayrton McCartney, is not here. We have sent out the search party. I put out an APB. I've reported in missing persons, and I've made sure to hide the body well. So, with that said, we have a special guest with us tonight, Mr. Stephen Kemp of the Ballad of Dusty Tortillas fame. How you doing tonight,
Yes,
buddy?
sir. How's it going? I'm well. How are you?
Well, I've been better, but it costs more. So,
Fair enough.
that's
We were
that's
talking,
usually how that goes.
we were talking a little bit about our customary greetings, and I straight up lied to you because I said I usually say not too bad, but this time I said I'm well. And that's specifically because of 30 Rock.
Oh.
Because they lay out the distinction between good and well.
You know, on my old laptop, I actually had a sticker of Liz Lemon wearing booty shorts and roller skates.
That tracks. I like that.
Yeah.
What?
I mean,
Was it with the bowl cut and everything?
oh no! She had the long hair, like she was trying to look sultry. It was actually a fairly decent, I don't know, depiction.
Well, I've always thought Tina Fey's attractive.
No, I'm saying it was a decent depiction. Like she wasn't trying to look terrible.
Oh, okay. But yeah, you are correct. I am working on a project right now called The Ballad of Dusty Tortillas, which is part of.
Now that's a second iteration of the character, right?
Second iteration of the character?
No, not iteration of the character, but the second edition, like the second version of this series, the second issue, however you want to say it.
In a way. So we actually went through something a little strange.
Okay.
Through no fault of any of the creative team whatsoever, for reasons beyond our control, we actually no longer have our original artist, Nick Garber, from Apogee Comics. There's nothing wrong. Our relationship with Nick Garber is strong. But he's just not going to be able to do the interior art. Now, the first campaign on Indiegogo, simply The Ballad of Dusty Tortillas, it had a bunch of his art that was going to be featured inside of the comic book. And because we were shifting gears, we didn't want. We thought that it would be time consuming and probably costly to find somebody who can mimic his style. So we thought, well, okay, we'll just redo the book, which we wrestled with. We were like, maybe we should just forget the whole book and try again in a few months once the shame of this is settled. We thought about it, you know.
Right.
But at the time, we were in contact with an artist named PK, who's the owner and operator of PK Artworks, and we were getting some test pages from him for a story that we're planning called Cooper Bennett, which is a 1930s occult detective kind of thing, and Bryn showed me, my brother Brendan Kemp, who co-writes with me. He showed me these pages, and I was like, we should just get this guy to do Dusty. And after that, we started paying for full pages for full color, which is being done by Michael Beacon, another very talented, very influential person in the Comicsgate scene. And
now Michael Beacon.
Yes.
Where do I know that name from?
Michael Beacon Let me pull up some of his stuff because on the spot I lose all the names completely.
Is he of Seven Legions?
Seven Legions? Like I said, the names I always like. Okay.
Is it the same guy that? If it's Michael Beacon of Seven Legions, we actually had him on last night and had terrible boomer audio through Hangouts on the stream.
I'll check with him. I'll message him here in just a little bit to make sure.
All right, that'll be really ironic. But yeah, if it's that guy, we actually just had a. Go ahead.
And he didn't even talk about Dusty Tortillas.
We were having some really terrible audio issues. Like the audience was the viewers were rioting.
And it just happened. It just happened. He mentioned us every fifth word, and that was the word that got dropped.
Yeah, we were talking about it all night. Just nobody heard it. But no. Anyway, I'm sorry to interrupt. It just Michael Beacon. I was like, we interviewed Michael Beacon last night. Why is that? But it could be a common name.
I think you're right, though. I think you're right about that one.
Okay.
So we put this new team together. We started producing full promotional pages, and then we slapped it up on Indiegogo for a second round of funding, because the first round of funding actually went beyond its goal. Mm-hmm. And we went into a stretch goal, which extended the book from its standard 24 pages to a 28-page format.
Okay.
Excuse me. And so the book was fully funded, but things were changing, and the art was changing, and so Brendan and I, we had a discussion about what we should do as far as the customer is concerned, because we thought of it as a moral obligation to not only inform them, of course, but also offer them a 100% no questions asked money back guarantee. If they don't like the book the way it is anymore, they don't get the book, and they get every red cent back.
Right.
Now, in addition to this, because the art was changing, if the old art from Nick Garber, which was fabulous, by the way, the old art from Nick Garber, it being such a different style, maybe some of the people who were exposed to Dusty Tortillas weren't a fan of it then, but they might like it now. So we also wanted people to have an opportunity to buy into what is relatively a new product, or at least a very different looking product.
Okay.
And what happened is that we did have some refunds. That did happen. So the second round of funding is specifically to recoup what we lost, and to expand our audience, which we have.
Right.
It's a far more modest campaign. I would say the energy level of the campaign itself is lower, but that's because my brother Brendan is actually out on business, and
right.
He doesn't have very good internet connection where he is right now. And when it comes to promotion, he's the heart and soul of this. I'm running on fumes.
Right.
So that's really where we are. And one thing that I like to say about the Ballad of Dusty Tortillas, Back in the Saddle, which is the name of the Indiegogo campaign that we have currently. The other one's closed.
Okay. Yeah.
The fun thing about Ballad of Dusty Tortillas, Back in the Saddle, is that if you buy into the book now, you get the book. It's already funded. It's a guarantee from us that it's happening.
Right.
And that's basically where we are right now.
Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, I hate that happened. I understand, and that's one of the things about crowdfunding that a lot of people don't really understand. Like, this is a learning curve for everybody. Like, there are some campaigns that go off without a hitch, but as a human being, you have to realize that there's going to be human being problems. Mm-hmm. And I've always appreciated the benefits that crowdfunding can give a campaign, and even the consumer, because the consumer gets to have a voice in what's created. It's essentially you're buying in on the ground floor of a product. So I mean, if you're the next Superman, for instance, if you're the next Action Comics #1, somebody that spent $20 to get a book delivered to their door is in on the ground floor of it, and that's exciting again. That's what made comics like rush and decline in the 90s, was people were finally finding out that those golden age and silver age books were worth money, and they thought that everything with the #1 on it was worth money.
Yes.
But I do
Today
feel
it still
like
is. Just
well, yeah.
not for you. With money to Marvel and DC.
Right, because of that speculator market. But I feel like it's less of a speculation in Comicscape, because one thing that I definitely appreciate as well is the fact that while Marvel and DC, like we've just kind of touched on a little bit, they view sales as what ships to a retailer, even if it never moves off the shelf. Every single person that backs a project on Indiegogo or even Kickstarter, which I know isn't really the Comicsgate standard, but some creators use it. Every single person that backs that book is a customer. They want your product directly, and that's got to be a much better feeling than knowing you might have shipped 200,000 units, but you'll never know how many of them actually ended up in readers' hands.
Oh, certainly, and that's why that's why we strive to, and we hope that we treat our customers with the amount of care and respect they deserve. One of Bryn's best ideas throughout all of this was we actually got a new print done by eBay Canales, and it's a loyalty reward. So basically, anybody who was a physical backer for the original Ballad of Dusty Tortillas who did not request a reimbursement, we're sending them an exclusive print to hang on their wall, absolutely free. And I was really excited when Bryn mentioned that.
No, that's
Go
ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I lost you for a second.
Oh no, I have a cough switch. I just kind of turn it on when someone else is talking, so I don't pick up auxiliary sound.
Okay.
I have small children, and occasionally they'll come and try and take over the show because they want to be internet famous.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Don't all kids? I don't even want to be internet famous. But
my first word was actually don't forget to subscribe.
That's right. Hit that like button. Yeah.
Yep.
So now, when you say you had some issues with the art situation, and through no fault of anyone, obviously, did that affect the story at all? Just from a storyteller standpoint, this isn't like a critical grilling hour. As a fan, I'm just fascinated by the process, and everyone is slightly different. So, as a writer, when the art changed, did that have an effect on how you were telling the story based on the different art style, or were you able to? Go ahead. Sorry.
In one singular way. And very specific. It's a little bit of a spoiler, but I mean, shows are fun when they give you a little spoiler. It's all right.
Right. And they'd have to watch for at least 20 minutes at this point to get that. So.
And then remember the spoiler by the time they get the book. I get spoilers all the time that I forget.
Right.
And then it's double exciting when I get surprised and I was like, oh, I knew that. But it was actually Nick Garber. There's a scene towards the beginning where there's a town hall meeting, and to give us a little bit of variety as far as colors are concerned in the background, he put the whole thing in a big tint.
Okay.
So we had red, white, and blue behind everything, and so the bad guys have to make a getaway, and how they do it is they pull the tent stakes out. And the tent falls on everybody, and then they run away. But that it's not the way it is in the script. So when we sent PK the new script, there's no mention of the tent. So he drew it in the street like it always was. And so and so we had to change the writing a little bit because there's no tent stakes to pull out. Well,
Okay.
after the revised script. And so Brandon and I were having a conversation. We talked about it for maybe a good 15 minutes straight. And I think it was me. I'm going to toot my own horn here. I think it was me. I was like, why don't they just throw dynamite at the crowd?
You have no idea how hilarious that is on this channel.
Oh, really?
Well, usually on Monday and Wednesday, if we don't have any guest or any specific show lined up, what we'll do is what we call the Gospel of Comics, Gaming, and Radio, in which I will blindly and deftly play some sort of old school Game Boy game or something through Visual Boy while we listen to old time radio shows from the public domain. And the most popular one that we do is The Shadow. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that property.
One of my all-time favorite characters.
Okay. So while we listen to The Shadow, I don't know if you recall or not, but nearly every episode or every other episode has a mention of someone using dynamite in some capacity or another.
I'm not as familiar with the radio stuff, but that doesn't surprise me.
Well, it was in the 30s and 40s, and it was produced by a coal company and a tire company jointly. So it just, the meme on the channel is dynamite. In fact, I'm going to flip over and look at the chat, and I'll be surprised if someone doesn't mention the dynamite thing in the next minute or so, if there's anyone in here that remembers the radio show. But,
well, I mean, color me ignorant, but what's the name of the YouTube so that I can take a look at it?
Oh, the channel? Oh, it's the Gospel of Comics. It's the link in the tweet you shared earlier. I
don't read things I share. That's why I share them so I can read them later.
Oh, okay. All right. Good to know. I can incriminate you on that somehow. I'll just figure it out later.
I mean, I just straight up said I don't know where I am to your entire audience. We talked about it earlier. Okay.
There we go. Kimsford, the novel bro, says Mago is dynamite proof. Margot Lane, the Shadow's trusty companion. At one point, the Shadow makes her put on a bulletproof vest and get shot at as a distraction so he can get the bad guy.
That tracks. That sounds like something he would do. No, I was actually just kind of for fun. I never imagined that it would that it would come to anything, and it still hasn't. I started writing a new Shadow screenplay.
Oh, okay.
And so I did a lot of research into it, and I found out that he's originally a pulp novel character.
Yes, yes, the dime novels that you would get at like the newsstand.
Yeah, and the purest iteration of him has no powers whatsoever, which I thought is very, very interesting.
He's a hypnotist. It's not a power. It's it's just a hypnosis trick that they used to believe in.
There's not even a mention of there's not a lot of mentions of that in the novels whatsoever. He was basically a stealth operative.
Oh, he's he was like Batman, wasn't he?
Yeah, but for the radio play, they started introducing his ability to cloud men's minds, because there's only so many ways to describe him hiding behind a crate.
Yeah, but then you gave him that ominous laugh that like echoed through everything.
Okay, I may lose some nerd cred here. No one did it better than Alec Baldwin.
Oh yeah, you're definitely going to lose some nerd cred here. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and edit that out after the show so nobody has to hear it. I'm going to try and save your reputation. But no. Well, you'll have to come on for one of our Shadow radio shows. We talk smack in between the episodes and off mic in the background. But I just sit around and play some leaf green while the shadow plays in the background, because some people just listen and some people put it up on screen. So I was like, I guess something should be moving.
So are we on radio right
No,
now?
no, we're on
Okay.
we're on YouTube. I do a very
I
small
guess that,
YouTube comics podcast.
okay.
Right
Then
now,
again,
the
I
only
just asked you what your YouTube was so I could listen to the chat. I could have answered my own question, but I wasn't paying enough attention to the words coming out of my own mouth.
that's
There's a
fantastic.
common
That's how writers should be. Novel Bro in the chat is actually working on a novel, um, some high fantasy work, and he is probably the most random person I've met on the internet. Um, so I can imagine that as a writer, it's a pretty scatterbrained world. Most of my friends that went through being English and history majors to do any kind of major writing or even editing or anything like that, they always said their process involved either illicit substances, alcohol, or sufficient other ways of self torture.
I'll say this: it's a lot of outward processing. So like from week to week, I've already gotten rid of I've already dumped my memory banks for like the last 2 months, and so
Okay.
people will tell me that I've eaten at like a specific restaurant, and like I'll say, oh, I want to try this place, and they'll be like, no, you were there a month ago, and I have no idea because I've already moved on to a lot of different things by that point. I could
Well,
it could just be from doing too much acid in the 90s, but I don't think so. I
well,
don't
it
know so, but I
depends.
don't think so.
It depends on whether it was good acid or bad acid.
Uh, I wouldn't remember.
Exactly.
That's the thing.
Hmm. If you
Okay,
remember
there
it,
we
then
go.
it definitely wasn't good acid. But no, I've got the Indiegogo actually pulled up on screen. I've been flipping through some of the artwork while we were chatting back and
Okay.
forth. But
Yeah, I'm
just
taking
for
taking a look at it now. That's actually that's part of the eBay Canales print that we're looking at right there.
right,
And you don't see the whole thing. There's plenty more to it, but we wanted to we wanted to we wanted to tease it a little bit so that people knew it existed. Um, but that's really for people who have stayed with us the entire time,
right,
and we have no plans to release it in its full form currently.
okay.
Um,
Well,
um,
I definitely like the line work and the hatch work. I mean, and all of it's really awesome. The shadow, the drop shadow in the background, it looks almost like watercolor.
mhm. And that's this is gosh, we I was making a joke that we've collected something like 4 or 5 different iterations of Dusty Tortillas between the art from Nick Garber, PK, Ebi Canales, and Simon Potier. And there's even one from our buddy Winger, that we could do this extended sort of like a Ninja Turtles Forever style team up with just the different Dusties through the multiverse.
Have somebody shoving Dusty through a collider, are we? Little Spider Verse reference.
Yeah. We thought of a few different ones that we could do as far if we because it's set in 1901, so we can have him live up into the middle of the century, maybe even the latter half, get him into the 60s and stuff like that, and have him team up with other heroes as Krusty Tortillas.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I like it.
um, but actually, that reminds me that as far as your audience is concerned, they probably don't know much about like what's going on and why it's called Dusty Tortillas.
Well, that's what I was
Um,
about to try and shoehorn my way into. I do have the
yeah.
Indiegogo pulled up on screen, so we can actually start kind of going through that there. And
Okay. Uh,
we've got the overview. When Dusty Baker, aka Dusty Tortillas, interfered in an assassination attempt on the mayor of Melville, he unknowingly took the first step down a very treacherous path. Aided by his lifelong friend, Misty Trousers, fantastic name, our young hero begins to uncover a conspiracy that could jeopardize the entire town. The Ballad of Dusty Tortillas. The Ballad of Dusty Tortillas is a 24-page full-color comic book written by the brothers Brendan and Stephen Kemp. Interior Stephen. Interior art by PK and colors by Michael Beacon. So Michael Beacon is, yes, he's doing the writing, the lettering, and the coloring on Seven Legions of his book. That's where we know him from. I thought you said that he was doing the art, and I was like, wait, he didn't do the art for his own book, but he's doing the art for yours and everything else for his book? That makes no sense. But I understand now that he's doing the coloring. So
yes, I don't know if they did really have time to tackle the art for something else. I don't know. He's a talented guy. Now the second part of what was said isn't true. It's a 28-page.
Okay.
That was a stretch goal that was hit. I think this was copy paste from the last one, so that's a problem that we just haven't resolved. But it's 2 days left, and I think that I get the word out on that more easily just by saying it on streams than anything.
Right. And I do, I do wish that I had a larger audience to push you through, but we will obviously be sharing the link out and everybody distributing it out. And if nothing else, is something that you can put out in the Twitterverse and on various Discords and just try and get out there before the end of the campaign.
Please don't apologize to me for that. No, we're extremely grateful for anybody who's willing to listen to us and help promote. Extremely grateful.
No, I definitely appreciate that. I just don't ever want anyone to be disappointed. We're a small but growing channel, but I will tell you that the people that have stuck with us since the beginning, they're pretty fantastic. So
that's the way it always is. So I wanted to mention Dusty Tortillas because I say it so much that I've normalized it in my own head, and it sounds stupid, doesn't it? Like, no, genuinely.
Actually, no. I wanted to actually comment on that. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Chew.
Yeah. You're talking about the beat cop. That's what I call him.
Right. Yeah. Because all I can eat is beats. Okay, I like it.
Yeah,
I like it. That's clever. It actually reminds me of that kind of campiness mixed with a little bit of also seriousness. Like there's going to be some comedy mixed in with some heaviness.
Yes, and that it's best described by our former artist Nick Garber, who said this is Blazing Saddles as directed by Quentin Tarantino.
And that's fantastic. You can't go wrong with that combination.
We're hoping it lands with the audience. Honestly, I have a lot of faith in it. I love sharing the story as to why it's called Dusty Tortillas.
I would love to hear that story.
So Bryn calls me 2 years ago. He's working in the petrochemical industry in the greater Houston area, and he's in a blind panic. And I'm sorry, it wasn't a call, it was a text. He was like, "Hey man, I've got an idea, Dusty Tortillas."
And you're like, what?
I said, sounds like a Western.
Okay. Okay, so you guys were on that same wavelength. If someone had detected me Dusty Tortillas, I'd be like, well, get a different set. Get a different package.
The reason I mentioned his job is because he was hanging out at a food truck that did breakfast tacos. It was a ritual for people on his shift to stop by that truck, get a couple of breakfast tacos, and I don't know what part of the country you're in, but around these parts, people love their breakfast tacos, and a good way for restaurants to make sure that their tortillas don't stick together in the process of pulling them off a stack is to actually separate them and then put cornmeal in between them.
Okay.
And one day there was just a lot of extra cornmeal between those tortillas. Bryn picked up his tortilla, looked at it, and said, "Damn, these were some dusty tortillas." And that's the whole story. it snowballed from there. And when he decided that he liked the name Dusty Tortillas, he was like, everybody's got to have a stupid name. Like you'll have Sheriff Trousers and his daughter Misty, and that was something that I actually fought against. I was like, that's too stupid and it's a little vulgar. And he said, "Trust
perfect.
me." Yeah, it's grown on me. It's grown on me quite a bit. Um, and after that, it was a question of finding individual characters that will help service individual parts of the story as far as conflict, supporting characters, rounding out the town of Melville, which is a fictitious town in Kansas. And it literally translates into Flower Town from German. Just to keep a little bread theme. And of course, there's the mayor of the town, who people suspect lives high on the hog through ill-begotten means. His name being Fuller Pockets.
Oh, okay, I like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
right on the nose.
And there were some that we had to throw away. There was an idea that we were going to have a mysterious stranger character, kind of a flamboyant gunslinger from Mexico, named Fred Hole, and we never really found room for him in the story. Maybe later.
Okay, so really in on the name puns, even though you're playing everything, from what I can tell, completely straight.
Straight to a degree. There's jokes in it, and there's also a fair amount of splat stick. I find
Okay.
extreme violence. I find extreme violence very funny. And so happening in this book, there's things blowing up on people because they make contact with bullets, and nobody would ever survive these kinds of gunshots, but patching them up is relatively easy. Certain stunts that wouldn't normally be performed. Everything is generally just much more explosive and combustible in this universe than you would expect the Wild West to be. There's a barrel exploding on the front cover.
Okay, excellent.
I didn't do the layout for the front cover, so I don't know why it's exploding.
Okay. Why wouldn't it be?
Exactly. Why wouldn't it be? Because this is a book about fun and about excess.
I tell you
really,
exactly
really
why
is.
that barrel's exploding, and it's dynamite.
Dynamite. They got some left. I've went ahead and doxed the dynamite, and I'll say that since it's in the story, I made plans for it.
Okay.
And I'll say this right now, it's not even going to come to fruition in this issue. Because for the second one, we're planning 48 pages, and so the formatting is going to be a little bit different. We're going to expand some of the characters, especially somebody that people like to talk about down at the bottom, in a very different art style. This being from Sim Potier. If you'll scroll down to the scantily dressed woman with raven hair.
Yes.
That's Miss Myrtle Lynx.
Okay.
And she is the owner and proprietor of the House of Ill Repute, the aptly named Grindstone.
Yes. I just got done watching Scream, the television series, and if I'm not mistaken, it was either the Grindstone or the Grindhouse was their coffee shop. So that's fun. Or things should have grind in their name.
It's a real word, so I shouldn't be surprised that somebody else used it.
Well, yeah, I don't think it was a house of the night,
right,
in the Scream series, but I see that there is a dead man and a man that kind of wishes he was dead.
Yeah,
but,
this isn't part of a scene in the book. So our buddy up in Montreal, Simon Simpotier, as a promotional consideration, not only for projects that he believes in, but also for himself, which has been very effective because he doesn't ask me to talk about him on streams. I just have to because he donated this beautiful artwork. Uh,
I mean,
so
it is great artwork.
yeah. Um, so I didn't design this. This isn't a scene that I had in mind. Bryn actually just gave him a few notes. He was like, "So Myrtle Lynx is a woman in her mid to late 30s. She owns and operates a cat house, for lack of a better term, and her signature weapon is going to be the two-shot Derringer." That's all
Oh,
he said.
yeah.
That's all he said. Sim created this scene of murder that you see before you, right off the top of his head.
And it's fantastic.
It is beautiful.
Yeah,
Although,
I would be unable to not talk about the creator of this as well.
yeah.
We even went so far. Our background that we usually use when we don't have Indiegogos pulled up. If
Hmm.
you'll be able to see it in about 20 or 30 seconds if you still got the stream up, but it's the open comic book, and we included the creator's stamp and Twitter handle, so everyone should check out Atomic Denny because he did all this for the
Oh
show
wow,
and for the same reason. So
I love the style. I really do.
yeah, he even designed the actual show logo when he did this piece. I've continued using that logo to this day, and it is a fantastic logo. So
I
that guy
mean,
does work.
when you've got a good one, because I've had YouTube channels in the past. Um, when you've got a good one, you're grateful to have it, and you know that changing the branding is going to be such a pain. So when it's really good the first time, you just don't mess with it.
Yeah.
You really don't. um,
Anyway, sorry,
one
segue. I can relate to always having to kind of give credit to those artists. We try and credit everybody that promoted and done anything for the show, but it definitely shows when you get something like that, because I mean this level of artwork to just be basically donated to this project, it
Mhm.
is beautiful. And not
Un-
just because it's a scantily clad lady, but I mean just the art style, the cross hatching. Even though it's a very minimalistic background, there is some depth to the photo, and you can see where the corners of the walls are.
I agree, Captain Weave. That is an excellent image to be greeted with.
Oh,
Yeah,
Captain Weed's
it's
in the chat.
and one of the observations that I made, because I'm training myself to become an artist. I'm crap right now. Can I curse? I don't know your show.
I don't see why the fuck not.
Okay, I'm shit right now.
Okay.
Nowhere near this level. Um, but in observation that I made, not everybody agrees with me, and I understand it's a perspective. Um, but my I kind of think of the artist, the artist as the drummer in a band. You
Okay.
know, they hold everything together, and everybody's absolutely got to have one. But especially with like Big Two and stuff like that, they don't always get all the glory. And
Right.
thankfully, in the independent scene, it's different, and it's different because there's so many creators who are dependent on people who have invested the time necessary and the skill to do it with any level of mastery or efficiency.
Right.
Um, and I think I actually like that it's very much art. It's very much artists first, because when you grow up with comic books, you grow up with names like Stan Lee,
Yeah.
and you could argue that Jack Kirby is both more important and more influential to the story of Marvel comic books. That's an easy thing to argue, but you don't hear about him.
Well,
He's not the household.
an easier argument is without Steve Ditko, there probably wouldn't be a Marvel Comics today. Nobody talks
Right.
about that either.
But yeah, so and that's why I always mention Sim also, because he just did us a fucking solid. Honestly, he made this campaign look great, and we've been talking about it for what, 10 minutes? Just Myrtle Links. We've been talking about it for like 5-6 minutes straight.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
beautiful promotional tool.
yeah. Well, just to be fair, I do usually try and go through and let you touch on every piece of it. I just scrolled back up to the top. We skipped a little bit.
I am going to save that audio and take it way out of context.
Oh yeah, definitely. That's
I like
what
to
we're
take
here
a
for.
minute and let you touch on every part of it.
That's right. I mean, I want you to have it for a ringtone. I want that to go off in an elevator somewhere.
When you open
Play
a box
that.
of Captain Crunch, it should be heard. This
That's
special
correct.
little electronic tab.
It should be played during the Cosby hearing.
Oh,
I went
is
there.
that dude getting an appeal?
No, I don't. I'm sure he will try. I mean, he's Cosby. What are you gonna do? Spend your money in the commissary? It's only so much ramen you can store in yourself. But
You can get some of those street flavors.
that's
You can
right.
have them smuggled in.
Like the chili
No way.
lime.
More references to sitcoms we have no idea the validity of.
Oh no. But
'Cause I've never been to prison.
just no comment. I've never been to prison, but I know a lot about it.
Conjugal
Moving
visits.
on.
Was it church? Was it conjugal visits?
That's correct. That is absolutely
All right.
right. I mean, being a house of worship, you gotta be careful. Now, the first image in the Indiegogo, I'm going to go back to. This is the cover image, like you said, and you didn't plot it out, but
No.
I'm assuming that Dusty is the smaller figure, is a young kid, or just a very stunted man.
He is 18 years old.
Okay,
But
he's really short.
He seems it, doesn't he? So it's just visual language for
Okay.
this is the kid. This
Right.
is the young upstart. So everybody is a little bit physically larger and more imposing than he is. In the story, he is expressly 18, which has everything to do with modern sensibilities.
Right.
Because we're planning for a romance element later, and if you go any younger than that with the modern audience, it gets icky. It may be historically accurate, but it's icky.
Yeah. Right.
So we just decided not to do it.
And not everybody can pull a George R. Martin.
Right. And the other thing is that it's not supposed to be thought provoking or harken back to realism in the Old West. It's supposed to be fun.
Right.
So we just made him shorter so that you look at him and he's the kid. We made him 18, so if he kisses the girl, you don't worry about it too much.
That's fair.
And that's basically it. Now, some people might scoff at the fact, because you mentioned again that I didn't plot out the cover for any particular reason. Although this scene is from. Is actually from the book. This is going to happen in the book. It's not going to look quite like this, and that's because this is actually based on a piece of fan art.
Okay.
This was a beautiful and the name is escaping me right now. I really should have committed that to memory. But there was a piece of fan art brought in, and we were so enamored with the tone. With the way everything worked inside of it, with the scale, with the drama associated with it, that we handed it over to PK, and we said, we love this art, but it's not ready for prime time.
Right.
Can you take this? Can you take this and make it our cover? And this is what he produced.
Okay. Oh, I definitely. Now, who's the man in black?
The man, hopefully through the course of the story, it'll be more obvious that he's in charcoal gray.
Okay.
And that is Sheriff Trousers.
Okay.
Sheriff Trousers has been a lawman in the city of Melville since before Dusty was born. and services as a mentor character to him.
All right, so he's the Western Mr. Miyagi by the last name of Trousers. I'm with it.
Yes. Pat.
I'm with it. I'm down.
Patrick Pat Trousers.
All right.
Yeah, and the purpose here being is that this it can be a little bit of a groaner when you mention this, but it's an issue 1, and it's the first issue 1, and it's an origin story.
Right.
So you need I think several motivating factors in that person's life, not the least of which being his own sense of right and wrong, which we're going to tap into in the greater scope of the story, because this is very much a story about violence, and how it shapes the world around you, and helps to enforce your will. And you have to ask yourself, do the ends justify the means? And as a young person, Dusty is going to need a mentor character to help guide him through these thoughts, feelings, motivations, and eventually actions.
All right. Well, I definitely agree. I'm not questioning. I'm just curious. Like, I'm just taking all this in. I'm a big time lore buff. Like, when it comes to the story of a character, that's what I'm there for. Like, the fight scenes are great, but I really enjoy comic books that have a little more substance to them than 20 pages of fighting and 4 pages of introduction.
I can definitely agree with that. Although there was this thing that shaped a lot of the ideas that went into the violence, and one of the most important influences there is actually old Hong Kong kung fu movies. Because. Yeah, big. Okay, I'm not what you would call an aficionado, but I've seen a good deal of them. And one thing I noticed is that when punches and kicks are being exchanged, it gets kind of fucking boring. Like, I know that's the movie, but when they're punching and kicking at each other, it's. But every once in a while, in an individual movie, or maybe several times in a movie, you'll get a fight scene that's got like a weird thing going on. And this isn't a classic Hong Kong kung fu movie, but if you take something like Jackie Chan, Legend of Drunken Boxing, where he's fighting inside of a foundry, so people are getting kicked into hot coals, and he's breathing ethanol over people to light them on fire and stuff like that. That's when stuff gets really interesting.
That's the entire premise that, the entire generation of movies like The Matrix, and even going further on, movies like Ong Bak took to an extreme and capitalized on. Because, the fight scenes in The Matrix were really like highly fetishized versions of just old kung fu movies.
Right.
And you throw in like what would be a virtual mixer for real life and reality, but
right, in order to justify what they can do, because in the old kung fu movies, it's either mysticism gives you superpowers or nothing does, which is an answer in those movies. Just because he knows he did karate long enough that he can fly through the air.
Yeah, we did karate long enough that we can like super leap through the air on fishing line and actually pull off bicycle kicks. That's always been my favorite. Like, anytime I see a bicycle kick, I always want to like find like a 10-year-old and ask him to try and do it, so I can just watch him jump onto his back a lot.
Oh, that's nice of you. The bones are springier.
I did it when I was 10 for like 3 hours straight before somebody told me that's impossible.
Spinal fusions are just a tradition in my family.
But
well, one thing I noticed coming through Comicsgate, and because I started really collecting comics 5 years ago.
Oh, okay.
Started really collecting.
Now, when you
5 years ago.
When you say really collecting, were you a casual reader beforehand?
Yes.
Okay.
I was more into the movies and television shows. I was always more into those. But But then when I started, when I started investing time and unfortunately significant amount of money into projects that didn't make a lot of sense from the big two, and even Image has some groaners. Um,
Oh yeah.
what I noticed is that comics used to have this way about them when it dealt with violence, because there was tension because something was happening.
Hmm.
You always, Spider-Man is a great example. He'd have to use science to like think out his problems. Like the Rhino, he wears a massive suit, so only his face is sweating. So if I run from him long enough, agitate him, goad him into attacking me without being so fast that he loses interest, eventually he'll literally pass out from hyperthermia.
Yeah.
Um, and that's a really good idea for a Spider-Man fight, because you have to read it. There's still images, and so it has to be an engaging concept as well. And a lot of times you just don't get that in modern comic books.
No. No.
Especially for
And they'll stretch out what is a 5-minute conversation over 24 pages.
right. After showing you a splash page, which is like several angles of punches and kicks to
Mm-hmm.
the face of somebody, like um, blinking on a fictitious person's name now. He can mimic any move after seeing it. Once the Taskmaster,
Taskmaster,
so,
yes.
somebody just beats the Taskmaster to hell, and you're wondering both how and why. How did you manage it? He's the Taskmaster. Unclear, but we're going to talk over coffee for a little while. Um, so I will say another spoiler. The book begins with a 10-page action sequence, but it's 10 pages because stuff is happening in it, stuff that you need to know for the story. And that was part of it that was important to me.
I definitely I understand what you were getting at as far as just finding that kind of lacking, just lacking heart. Um, even in the '90s, when people talk about the comics bust, and if you just started collecting a few years ago, like you wouldn't really know as much about this as far as from a first-hand perspective, but you probably heard about it or read about it or seen it in other people. But it was the big boom of #1 issues coming out and the foil chromium variant covers and merchandise and sealed mylar bags and
Yeah.
all of these gimmicks kind of just racked up the cost. But true collectors, like if you were collecting X-Men, then you had to buy 6 copies of X-Men #1 volume or volume 2 #1. That's how many variants there were.
Yep.
You had single character variants. You had the foil covers that had like 6 or 7 different versions. It was ridiculous.
Now
And
that kind of thing is true for a random issue of Ironheart, if they happen to be doing like Venomverse or something, which
yeah,
is literally a variant cover event. No
right,
story, just buy more comics, please.
right. Yeah, no joke. You like Venom? Well, then buy these covers that have story in them that no one wants to read anyway. But back in the '80s and '90s, at least the interiors of those books were good.
Mhm.
You had capable and professional artists and writers, and even if they would never agree with you or even acknowledge your human existence, they were writing stories for their fans, and they didn't openly trash their fans. The ones that did eventually just kind of fell off, just like normal. But because the industry self-policed that kind of crap, nowadays it just seems like I think that I go on about this a lot. Anybody that watches this show a lot has heard the Secret Wars rant, so I won't go into it full. But Secret Wars 1987, the first Marvel Comics crossover event, besides the wedding of Reed Richards and Sue Storm. even though that was only one issue. Don't at me.
Mhm.
1987 Secret Wars. I think they briefly, like 3 or 4 episode series, it in the Spider-Man TV show, the animated series.
Yeah, in kind of a weird way,
Right.
I think.
But that event was really important to me growing up. So I ended up picking up Hickman's Secret Wars 2015, and I bought into all the different titles that had a Secret Wars banner on it.
Mm.
That ended up being almost 300 books. And that's without
Really?
the 20 or 30 variant covers. Yeah, man, it was like 250 something. Because they canceled
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, they canceled the entire line at Marvel, with the exception of like 1 or 2 books, and everything else became a Secret Wars book in Battle World for a while, and then went back to normal publishing with a bunch of relaunches of all different Marvel.
That makes Homecoming make a lot more sense now.
But it was written by Jonathan Hickman, so the main series I was definitely invested in, and that's why the only thing in Image that I'm heavily invested in is East of West, even though that shit never comes out ever. But anyway, the tangent. But yeah, the quality of the storytelling from a lot of these creators is just atrocious. And when you finally get something that actually can stand on its own merit, and that's something that I think the indie books offer a lot of. Like I said, these books are going to the hands of fans that have either been sold on the idea or believe in the creators or a combination of both. You're not.
In our little part of the indie scene, it's definitely a marriage of those ideas. It's definitely a solid three-way.
Yeah. Well, it's a consumer thing. Like it's all based on the idea of, is this something that people want to buy and support? It's not
Right.
Is this something we can trick retailers into buying in mass regardless of whether anybody buys it off their shelf?
Yeah. And
And
the
Go ahead.
it makes me wonder. Well, okay. I have some anecdotal evidence that this was going on 7-8 years ago now. That it was actually Atari video games. When's the last time anybody said Atari out loud in America? I think I'm the first one in 10 years.
Well, they have been making a new console recently that's been a trash fire, but yeah, I get your point.
Yeah. Well, so 7-8 years ago, they announced that they are going to be they are going to rebrand themselves, and they're going to reinvigorate their brand by making products that specifically target the LGBT community, which confused me to a great degree. I didn't know, and I think of myself as a creative person with a strong sense of how to think critically, and I didn't know how to make a gay video game. So, and I'm a pretty liberal guy. It's not like I don't have any perspective on it. I just didn't know how to make a video game particularly gay without being offensive.
Real quick, just a quick update. Captain Weeb in the chat, I believe, just backed your book for the $5 level.
Well, thank you very much, Captain Weeb. Thank you very, very much. I sincerely hope that you enjoy it.
They question, would there be any twirly mustachioed banditos?
Twirling mustachioed banditos. We have no plans for. No plans for currently. But part of the writing process is always pulling characters right out of my ass.
With no pun intended, but with a name like Misty Trousers, I can see her definitely being tied up on some railroad tracks.
We've got plans for her. I don't want to.
Oh no!
I don't want to give up too much.
Don't dox the story.
But you definitely put that into my head. And if I need to design anybody real quick, big mustache just went to the top of my brain, just went to the tip of my tongue.
There you go.
I'll say that right now. But Atari, Atari said all these things, and then I don't remember any follow through. At least I don't remember any follow through that mattered. But I think that we're definitely seeing that we've been seeing that in comics in the last 3 to 4 years. That I think more than like a nefarious plot on the side of Marvel, I think that we're seeing them. Comics are shrinking. And so they may have been trying to tap other markets, and as a result, they brought in new creators that had these perspectives, and they wound up to be inexperienced, toxic people who were being rewarded just for their own identities. And like I said, I didn't know how to make a gay video game without making it offensive and pandering. Mm-hmm. And I think what we're seeing is offensive and pandering comic books.
I would agree with that on some levels, yeah. Certain things, like the reason that I bring up Secret Wars is, did you ever read the 87 series?
Secret Wars, yes.
Okay. Just refresh my memory, like I'm an idiot and don't know every single thing about that story by the back of my hand. Who was Captain Marvel in that again?
Was Captain Marvel in it?
Because Misty Knight, or not Misty Knight. Sorry, Monica Rambeau.
Yeah, Monica. For the era, it would have been Monica Rambeau.
Right. Who was in the Iron Man armor in that series?
That was Rhodey. James Rhodey Rhodes.
So wait. So you're telling me one of the most iconic superhero stories of our generation? Probably one of the most influential in the sense that, they started doing ongoing yearly events after it. That had two minority characters, not counting all of the white women minority characters.
Right.
Not counting Magneto as the representation of the Jewish community as a Holocaust survivor.
Mm-hmm.
Why you? Yeah, wait. Are you telling me that Titania and Volcania, two female powerful characters, were created as the villains in that book originally, and it also introduced
Spider-Man to a draw?
Right, and they also brought in Spider-Woman. I'm just getting at the fact that that we get all this pandering now, but it's not like comic books haven't always been diverse and inclusive if you knew how and what to look for.
I mean, at the time, it wasn't even, back then, it wasn't even difficult to look for. X-Men was one of their largest properties in and around that era, and you actually saw it led by a depowered Aurora Monroe.
Yeah.
A black woman literally from Africa.
Right.
It was front and center in our minds. And yet they managed to respect the fans, not piss anybody off, and tell great stories.
Well, I always kind of bring that up because they're the cover for Mockingbird, I believe it was, where she's wearing the shirt. Ask me about my feminist agenda. There's the fact that Captain Marvel's been shoved down our throats for not one but 7 reboots in the comics world. It's sad because it's almost like comic books are like, we just want to sell T-shirts and movies. We'd really like it if all you old guys would stop buying our product that you've been buying for 30 years. That'd be great.
I mean, their T-shirts and movies don't even follow that agenda. They are practically this little annoyance. This black sheep of the marketing family that gets caught up in these ridiculous Twitter flame wars. That honestly, I think Marvel Disney as a whole, if they thought they could get away with it, would be happy to divorce themselves from. But they know they can't get away with it. they sold their movies on the idea that there's a comic book to back it up, even though nobody buys it.
And yet, the perfect advertising platform for a comic book might be a movie that, 1 billion people saw.
Yeah, when it really ought to be the other way around, a relatively cheap comic book by comparison, and the prices should have stayed way down, but they couldn't do that because of the bottom line, because they weren't selling enough books. It should have been the other way around, where you could find these comic books anywhere and get excited about the next movie. Everything about it's completely backward, and it stems from the fact that nobody wants these books.
Yeah, well, that's something that it kind of. I like to say that it kind of started creeping in 2008 in the political sense, and then it just kind of got worse from there in an identity politics sense. But let's not get super depressed on the topic of how shitty modern comics are. Let's get excited about the fact that we've got Dusty Tortillas to kind of bring us back from that threshold of just despair and hatefulness that Marvel and DC have put in the pit of our stomachs.
Oh, there's plenty of hate, but it all comes from the bad guys. But sorry, I wanted to address Captain Weeb. We need a white Black Panther to even things out. Don't quote me on this. It's hearsay because I haven't tracked it down yet. But there's supposed to be a series of Black Panther books, not a whole series, just an arc within one of the monthlies, where we meet his white cousin, and Black Panther wants to bring him into Wakanda, and treat him as a member of the royal family, but as an outsider who looks so different, not everybody wants to accept him, and it's an example of reverse racism. From what is a very elite and privileged part of Africa.
Yeah, but see, why do we want that in comics at all?
Why would we want that in comics at all?
Like, it just there's a time and a place, I think, and this is from a fan's perspective. There are books out there like I Kill Giants. Are you familiar with that one? I
Kill Giants. Ooh, it's jogging my memory, but I can't do it.
It's about the little girl whose mother, and this is spoiler alert, everybody just like mute for a second. It's about a little girl whose mother has cancer, and the little girl like sees the cancer as a giant in her imagination, and as long as she can kill the giant in her imagination, her mother is going to be fine. And it's about the little girl accepting, something that heavy in a graphic novel format. But it's not done with an existing property, if that makes sense. Like they're not trying to make Robin deal with the death of Alfred by cancer.
Right.
And I think there's a time and a place for something like that. And the idea of reverse racism and racism are fine political talking points, and they're fine. But if you want to sell comic books, I mean, we're talking about, just these mass appeal characters that you're trying to sell movie tickets for. Why would you want to potentially cut out your readership of 8 to 10, 10 to 12, 12 to 14-year-olds by making it something so heavy that parents wouldn't want to sell it to them, and you'd have to put a teen plus or a mature tag on it? That makes sense?
Yeah, and it definitely does. My perspective on it is that the comics that we probably shouldn't have read as kids are the ones that we remember the best. I know that no kid is going to pick up Dusty Tortillas. It's just not the market for indie comics. But one of the things that I really helped or tried to help shape Dusty Tortillas into is the kind of comic book that if you had it when you were a kid, you'd have to hide it under your mattress. Just because you knew your parents were going to think it was too sexy, it's too violent, and there's commentary in there. It's not straight up modern political, but it speaks to things that it speaks to anti-establishmentism and other things, other stripes of political ideology that's prevalent throughout the world today. And I understand the perspective of not wanting to bog down a story that is purely for entertainment purposes with something like that. But I do think that using those elements, using elements in stories that are going to provoke thought, maybe even bring people outside of their comfort zone, can actually help. It doesn't. They're not required, but they can help to make a story great. Where we fall flat today, far too often when trying to tell these kinds of stories, I think, is that we have authors out there who give a perspective and then assume they're right.
Yeah.
Where if you're going to get, I think, because there's plenty of perspective, there's plenty of belief, personal belief, in the Ballad of Dusty Tortillas. But I'll tell you one thing: if anything is going to make you ask yourself a question in this book, I'm going to answer it, and that's where it falls flat. There's no assumptions. If I'm going to make a case, I'm going to make a case instead of instead of saying something like Orange Man bad. If it's gonna, if you're gonna say Orange Man bad in your comic, tell me why. Don't just say it and assume you're right, because that's the kind of that's the kind of arrogance that not only makes the storytelling condescending and preachy, it also makes it lazy.
Well, Orange Man obviously bad because of
Man not supposed to be orange.
No, he's obviously bad because of the twatters.
Ah, that's true. That's very true.
Let's finish going through the campaign real quick before we run out of airtime here. I've got to get up and go to work at a certain point, so probably gonna cut it around 12. We still got about a half hour, and I definitely want to finish getting through the campaign here because this is super interesting. But I will tangent all night if I don't get myself back on a track.
So one of the things I would love to hit are the different tiers that you can buy into. And so $5, just as our friend bought earlier, is the Telegram. Short and sweet. It's your digital copy. For $10, that's the Double Barrel, which gets you an unsigned copy, a digital copy, and a mention on the thank you page. We were warned against these cute little names, and this is all Bryn, because you have to click on these things in order to figure out what you get, rather than it just being called what you get.
No, man, you gotta have the cute names.
The custom Double Barrel, which is $15 US, is your signed copy, signed by me, your digital copy mentioned on thank you page. I did the weird thing.
So wait, you're telling me that Brendan set up the campaign and copy pasted a lot of this stuff, and you're the one that has to sign the books? You should both have to sign them. He should have to sign them twice.
We live nowhere near each other. Not even close. I live in Texas. He lives in Washington.
Doxed.
So it would be an additional cost. In the first Inception, it was Nick Garber who was going to be signing them. But Nick Garber actually agreed to be our distribution service. Essentially, he was gonna fulfill everything, and once he was off the project, that got shifted over to me, because we weren't gonna ask our new artist to take on all these additional responsibilities.
Right. Yeah. We know you just got here, but can you also take care of receiving the books, signing them, packaging them, shipping them, and making sure all of the bonus material that came from the stretch goals gets out too? Okay. Thanks. Bye.
Yeah. So for the custom double
$30.
Custom double barrel.
Okay.
For $30, you get the 3 of a kind. That's your signed copy, your digital copy, you mention on the thank you page, and your pinup poster of Ms. Myrtle Lynx. And 45, the Gunslinger. That's a signed copy, digital copy, pinup poster, mention on the thank you page, and your custom sketch card.
Okay.
Funny thing, I forgot to mention this earlier. If anybody's thinking about buying the Myrtle Lynx, she got this artwork got put on blast. Huh?
Go ahead.
Oh, by one of our friends, Hexbox. Hexbox, who's a gun aficionado. She's like, that's too big for a Derringer. And then
maybe she just has small hands. Are you hand shaming?
She clued us. She was actually in the chat while we were streaming about this, and she actually sent us a picture of her Derringer in her palm. And I was like, you know what? We didn't give him any notes about it because it looks cool, but we appreciate we appreciate your input because nobody grows without criticism.
Well, I mean, if you would have done that to anybody at Marvel and DC, they would have considered it a death threat, so you're already doing better than them.
Right. Luckily, Sim actually came into the chat when she started talking shit about his art. But she's cool. We all know the deal. But yeah, so just a few individual tiers, which even that everybody's got a hot take on when it comes to what you're supposed to do with your tiers.
Weeb wants to know if you can upgrade to a higher tier. He wants to get the hot babe print when payday hits.
So Bryn set up the campaign. The last time we talked about it, he told me that Indiegogo doesn't have a way for you to do that. Basically, they say if you want to upgrade your purchase, then you need to talk to the person running the campaign. That being said, Weeb, if you've got Twitter, what I would love for you to do is find me on Twitter and follow me, because
you can find that information in the description down below.
Mm-hmm. Because whether or not we are going, because I'm assuming that payday is going to come sometime after the next 48 hours, and how many purchases we're going to allow after this time, which we would have to handle ourselves, is going to be a conversation between Bryn and I. I would love for you to be able to upgrade. I absolutely would. Opening that gate, it's going to be a decision. If we can, we absolutely will. I want you to believe that, and I'd love for you to follow me on Twitter so we can talk about it further. I would love that.
Very good. See, that's another thing. You get that kind of service with Comicsgate. You don't get that in Marvel and DC. Oh, you missed it? Well, too bad. Maybe we'll print it again in like 6 years.
Yeah, but there's a reason for it. But we actually have the privilege of being able to do that kind of thing. Right. I consider that more of a privilege than saying, oh, that crummy Marvel make too many comic books to make people happy.
No, it's not. It's a privilege to be able to do it as a small creator. I think that it's a. Mm-hmm. I'm a very purist kind of old school comics guy. Like I understand like the importance, like we were talking about earlier, with the Black Panther and the reverse racism thing. I understand the importance of heavier issues in comics. Without them, you would still have the Comic Code Authority, because Stan Lee never would have bucked up against them with the story about the drug use in Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
However, I think that them being politically pointed is the biggest problem that we face. I don't think that they need to reflect anyone's personal politics or personal beliefs. If it fits a story, if it's necessary for the telling of the actual story, then it's something you want to have in. If it's not necessary for the point of the story, why is it there? Except to pander, like you were talking about. I think that's where I was getting at.
And the thing is that based on that assessment right there, I would say that you and I still disagree. But I'm about to make internet history right now.
Uh-oh.
That's okay, church.
See?
That's okay. We disagree.
Yeah.
And that's absolutely fine.
Right. And that's kind of what makes this community so great, is that we have the ability to do things like that. Like, I'm not a creator. I would never judge another creator's or a creator's decision to do something. I can have my opinions and my criticisms about it and still not be an asshole to that creator, or vice versa. But
yeah, it's I don't know. Sorry, there was actually an example that was earlier today, and it drove me absolutely insane. By the way, Captain Weeb, I am on team follow back. So my brother Brendan, he posted this thing, and he was showing some professional criticisms of the new Rambo. And one of them was in the hypersensitive culture of 2019, Mexican slavers being taken down by a literal white savior doesn't go down so easily. And I was amazed by that. I was absolutely amazed, because he called his own argument hypersensitive. And the fact that there are people out there that are okay with it, I think that's a symptom of the problem that is the culture war that we're in. There's an absolute lack of civility and an absolute dehumanization of anybody with a dissenting opinion.
Yeah, and that's always kind of been the issue with these people. See, I've been in several communities that it's happened in, and I say these people with the lightest of hands, but I've been a fan of Magic the Gathering, and I've watched Wizards of the Coast transform over the years from a game that supported its customers overall, because those were the people keeping it alive, and turn into a game that started to kind of shift and pander to another community that wasn't really involved in the game or the fan base, in an attempt to bring in more females and people of diverse backgrounds, usually sexually, because it's never really been a racial thing in Magic that I've noticed.
Right.
It's just a male-dominated hobby. Same with certain board games, and then eventually, like we were talking about earlier, it moved into comics. So,
well, let me ask you this, because I followed Magic for a while. When would you? But I stopped. God, really, 15 years ago. When did that shift happen? When they started tapping that different market.
I would say that it wasn't really noticeable until you started getting pushback from the actual company over out of game behavior, and that was pretty much cornerstoned by what happened to Jeremy Hambley of the Quarter.
Oh, okay, so that's recent.
Yeah, he was punished and banned from any official official tournament play or convention or anything like that was hosted by Wizards of the Coast for something he said about someone in the Magic community off of Magic premises, not being paid by Magic the Gathering, not being sponsored by them, not representing them whatsoever, for having an opinion about someone else. It was a little too spicy. Wizards of the Coast was like, you can't play our game anymore under any official capacity.
Lifetime ban. I would. Now, I don't think that sort of moral absolutism really works to a great degree anyway. but I don't know that I'd comment on it without knowing what he said and all the circumstances surrounding it. Uh,
Uh, I,
I know that a lot of people like him. I don't follow him too terribly closely.
I don't always like him and agree with him. He and I disagree on several major points, and we've never personally interacted. He's a great guy. I have no problem
Mhm.
with him. We've liked each other's stuff on Twitter a few times, but we don't always like agree 100% on some of his takes about things. And do I think that there is a more personable way that he could have handled himself? Absolutely. But the kind of person that I am has always been one of, if you're a corporation, be a corporation. Don't police people's communications with one another. If the guy works
Mhm.
for you, by all means, tell him, hey, you can't do that as you're a representative of us. But
Mhm.
he just bought your product. If it's not like he's seeking. Now, if he would have said something to this person in person at a Magic the Gathering event, then maybe I can
Right.
see it.
He's literally
He's
harassing their customers
right
at that point.
now. He's on the internet making a comment on a video or a photo. Is the
Mhm.
context of it, and regardless of what he says, it wasn't inciting violence, and it wasn't anything defamatory. He was just basically, I think he was just talking smack about what he quoted, quote unquote, an e-thought,
Okay.
and
Um,
that was his hot take, and it eventually got him banned from Magic the Gathering. But we're sidetracked all over the place. But that was what seemingly kicked off the idea that they started this whole social justice train, because there was some questionable things that came out after the fact, and that's all been gone through. But that's just one community. It's happened in the board gaming community. It's happened in the anime community, and it's happened in the comics community. And
yeah.
it's seemingly that anything that anyone enjoys, there's a certain subculture of people that is a very small vocal minority that likes invading it and trying to ruin it
I'm
for
holding
everyone.
out. I'm holding out for Shopkins Gate. I think that's the final straw. At that point, we can shut up. We can turn off all the lights, shut down humanity. At that point,
Shopkin Gate? Is that the toys
Shopkins
that
Gate.
my toddler plays with? The little tiny creature toys?
The little ones that look like items in the grocery store.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I know
So
about
like
those.
their action figures are like cartons of eggs or milk.
Fantastic. I want a transforming carton of eggs. I want a carton of eggs just like a transformer.
Oh, that would be really cool.
Yeah.
I gotta ask Panboy something because he's here now.
Oh,
Panboy,
Panboy.
I gotta ask which stream stopped for you to come over here because I know that's why you're here.
How's it going, Panboy? Good to have you in the chat.
Hell, brother. Um, actually, okay, you want a sidetrack? Here's one. I'm getting the sense that you may be a few years older than me.
A handful, I'm sure. I'm in my
Okay,
30s.
I'm in my 30s?
Okay.
Why am I such a light talker?
I have no
Um,
idea.
I've never
I
had that.
probably have a bigger beard than you.
Oh, I don't really grow facial hair that well, so I don't try.
Oh, so yeah, I definitely have a much larger beard than you, and that's why. That's why I sound
Okay,
older. I look older, so I probably sound older.
I get mistaken for a woman in the drive-thru every day.
That
Um,
that never happens to me.
um, so okay, then do you by chance happen to know when Happy Meals started? This is gonna feel right out of left field, but I'm going somewhere. Promise.
I'm assuming it was sometime before I was 5 years old, because I knew that was like the lifeblood of my childhood.
Okay, because I was thinking about the transforming chicken nuggets that turned into a pterodactyl.
Oh yeah, I definitely had
Um,
those.
and with my adult brain, this object screams to me of of a promotion that didn't have any licensed products. So they basically had to take the only things they owned, which was the food, and turn it into toys. So I think that I mean, I could have looked this up before I got here, but people our age, I think, we treat remembering things like a game, like a fun game to see if your brain still works.
Yeah,
Um,
well, we were the last generation to not be raised by our smartphones, so
right? um, yeah,
you know,
I
I
think
was
that may.
halfway through my current part of life before I ever got my own computer. When I was born, computers took up whole rooms.
Yeah. Um, I had we were working in the elementary school that I went to. We were working with Apple IIs.
Ah, fun.
We didn't
And
quite
you,
get we missed cassettes. We missed cassette desktop computing by just this much.
are you talking about the ones that you
Just
just like that had the built-in monitor that was like into the desk or whatever, and you like put your hands under the desk to type? You know what I'm talking
not
about?
quite built
Like,
into the desk.
you know what I'm talking about though. Like, at my school, the teachers had them for a while when I was in like elementary school.
At my elementary school, most teachers did not have a computer.
Oh no! It was like one or two, but it was like faculty or whatever. Not even really teachers. The ones that work in the office. There might be one that was like for record keeping or something. But it was just the
Yeah,
black
they'd be
and green DOS screen.
like a Brother 2 system.
Yes.
Yeah, with the memory on cassette.
Hmm. Yeah, the giant floppy disk, like the 8-inch floppy disk or whatever.
Yeah.
Oh
So you
Jesus
missed
Christ!
you missed the cassettes
Probably.
because they started using them in computing toys. 'Cause I had something called a 2XL, which is a little robot that would ask you trivia questions, but all of the non-volatile memory was on a cassette tape, and you actually
Hmm.
had to put a cassette tape in him, like into your stereo, and that's what ran the program. And you
Interesting.
like if you wanted to replay that part of the program, you actually had to rewind it or just play the B side.
All right.
Yeah, this is weird.
I mean, that's you sound like a guy that would be really, really good at trivia.
uh, I've come this I've come just short of greatness at a Parks and Recreation trivia night, and that's the only one I ever really did.
Okay. I always find myself at the rock and roll bingos that happen down here in the South because, well, it's the South.
Don't ask me one thing about the production side of music. I know the lyrics. Don't ask me the name of the drummer. Try to avoid the subject of the name of the band.
Yeah, that's kind of where I shine a little bit because it's that information that takes up all the spots that the astrophysics were supposed to go to when I was supposed to be great.
Oh, that's okay.
But
What's astrophysics ever gotten anybody?
well, you know, degrees, money. We don't talk about that though.
You know
But
what? Honestly, I want to know what an astronaut's pulling down after taxes. It can't be that great
I don't
for
know.
the
But
work you
yeah,
put in.
probably not because Buzz Aldrin or Neil Armstrong one are doing speaking appearances again. Whichever one's still alive is doing.
Buzz.
Yeah, he's doing speaking appearances again. I saw that in the passing news the other day. But in just kind of a closing wrap up fashion, Ballad of Dusty Tortillas back in the saddle. Great project. Already seen success on one end. Had some slight mishaps happened in the in between, and is now in his second round, trying to draw a little more support to finish out the project. Um, from what I've seen and what I've heard, you're working with a group of funny and well disciplined and determined guys, because a lot of people would literally just throw their hands up and be like, "Well, we tried,"
Mm-hmm.
and
Hey,
that's,
we almost did.
yeah, well, you didn't though, and that's something to be said for that. But you've got several different tiers, so if you just want to read the book, you can get it for as low as $5. If you just want to own the book, you can get that for as low as 10, or you can go up higher and get some prints and some extra goodies. 2 days left to back this campaign, so if you're watching now, or if you're watching on replay, if you're catching this because you clicked on a YouTube stream or a Twitter thread, then definitely take a look at this, and if it's something you enjoy, throw a couple of dollars at it, or just definitely share it around, all that good stuff. But help make it happen for these guys, because this looks like a fantastic and really fun project that can it seems like it has the potential to flesh out into a lot of different avenues, and good things typically just continue to get better. So.
And let me add one more thing. So right now we're sitting at 34%. With 2 days left, do not let that intimidate you. This book is funded. You buy into it now. You give us our $700 at somewhere around 37%. Guess what? You're still getting the book.
Yeah.
Promise.
Well, and that's definitely something to also be reassured by. It's not you're not taking a gamble here. This is one of the few times that Indiegogo is not correct. When you put back on this, it guarantees you a product. So you're going to get your perks if you back this, regardless of whether the overall funding goal is hit. So again, don't hesitate. If you're interested in this, then jump on it. I mean, I can't see why
you're gonna
wouldn't.
make me sad if you don't.
Right, and nobody wants to do that. I mean, Steven's he's a fun guy. Why would you want to make him cry? I can see the tears welling up from the virtual studio.
Off my meds. It's not fair.
I was gonna ask, but I didn't want to be rude. But anyway, that's about all I got. Is there anything else you want to add here in the close? We will.
I can't imagine what we haven't touched on at this point.
Well, I can, and thank God, because they would file charges. But otherwise than that, I will personally, we will say goodbye after the show. But to everyone that's checked in, to everyone that caught the replay, definitely appreciate all of you guys coming out here. You can check out all of Steven's links and the link to the Indiegogo campaign down in the description below. And give him a follow on Twitter, give him a subscription on YouTube, check the book out, back it, share it, all that good stuff. And with that, we will see you guys this weekend, Saturday night, same time, and we will be talking to someone, I'm sure. But anyway, have a good night, guys.
Good night.